Welcome to the Possibility Perspective with me, Jess. Authentic, bold, and challenging conversations. The authentic part comes in as me just showing up with an openness to possibilities. The bold is getting to some topics that might ruffle some feathers. And the challenging is for all of us, to challenge ourselves, be open to looking at things through a different lens. You'll hear stories from me, conversations with peers, and interviews with experts on a variety of topics, all with different perspectives. Now, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Possibility Perspective. I have an amazing guest with me today. Heather Leigh Strom is an award-winning author. She's a TV host on Gnostic TV, and her show is called Howling at the Moon with the Canine Guides. And she's also a Galactic Canine channel. And I'm going to pause there for a second because that's what we're going to talk about today and what that even means and what it means when you're somebody who comes into your gifts and what that experience is. And so I'm going to bring her on and she's going to talk more about this and how it's really redefined the way we understand our spiritual bond with humans and dogs. And so Heather Leigh, welcome to the show. I'm excited.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for having me. I'm really excited to share my story with you and your audience today because it's quite extraordinary and sometimes unbelievable.
And, and that's, yeah. And I think, in life, there's seekers, right? And we go through life and oftentimes we're looking for that thing that like our purpose in this world. And then sometimes when we find that purpose, we go, whoa, what is this? What's happening? Right. And so take us back a little bit and tell us more about this journey for you.
Yeah. And that's an incredible story. I wrote this book in 2022, and that is my journey. This book is not just about dogs and what they have to offer humanity, but it contains my lifelong journey to this point because I didn't realize everything in my life was in preparation for now. Even the horribly traumatic stuff. So that's how this all began. I always knew that there was something important about my life and who I was and my journey. And I was very guarded about what I believed, what I bought into. I understood inherently that certain things that we were being told about life were not true. My father was a preacher. And I never bought into religion. Not that religion is bad, but I just knew it didn't resonate with me. It wasn't part of my truth. So I never agreed with it. I never said, okay, I'll go to church and I'll say these words, these magical words that you insist I say. I won't do it because it's not part of me. It's not part of who I was. But I didn't understand why that was. I just knew that was a very distinct part of me. But yet I felt lost my whole life. I didn't fit in. I was full of a lot of really deep trauma from my childhood because my parents were both narcissistic. Having to survive in that environment was really, really rough. Plus, I had a number of very traumatic events happen early on in life, which are in my book. And that kind of defined who I was and my experience in life. The only shining light I had, because I don't look back at my childhood and think warm, fuzzy memories. Mm-hmm. I can't go back to my childhood and think of anything that I miss or anything that gave me joy. And that's a sad place to be in life, but that's where I was. And so when I got into my 30s, all of this built up pain was starting to surface, things I didn't even know were there. And it made me feel very lost and sad, made me feel inadequate. I didn't have a lot of social skills because I always felt isolated from the world because I felt so different. I didn't feel like I could relate to anybody. And so things started to brew for me, just really come to the surface. And I didn't know why I was here. I'm like, I don't enjoy life. I don't like humans. I don't want to be on this planet. Why am I here? I kept asking that question. Why am I here? I'm willing to do whatever it is I'm supposed to be here to do, but just please tell me, put me out of my own misery, And so I had dogs. That was the only thing that was my shining light in life, were the dogs that I had. And at a very young age, I started training dogs. When I was 12, I had a dog training business. I had contracts I had written out. I was doing board and train at my home. So I was an entrepreneur from the beginning. And throughout my life up until this point, I've had 30 of my own personal dogs.
Wow.
I ended up becoming a professional dog trainer, and I competed nationally and internationally in a variety of different dog sports. So, and I bred dogs. So I've had hundreds, if not thousands, of dogs come through my hands over the last 55 years of my life. So there wasn't a canine component, but I always thought it was secondary. Like it wasn't the focus of my life. Even though I was able to make a good living at it, it was really hard work. And you never got time off when you're taking care of animals. So I actually bailed out of that because I didn't want my life to be that way. I wanted time for me. And so I always thought like it felt like it was secondary in my life. I was also a professional. I was a physical therapist and a massage therapist and a functional medicine practitioner. So that scientific side of me wanted to take forefront because that was a good way of making a living, right? So I was shoving out and stuffing down all the spiritual aspects of me in order to pursue the logical parts of me. And what I couldn't see was the way that the dogs were attempting to work with me throughout this entire process. My first dog I had when I was 4, and she's in the book. And the dogs were offering me these spiritual tools to heal everything that was hindering me, that was getting in my way of my own light, that was preventing me from seeing who I truly was. And when I had a astrological reading when I was in the midst of my awakening, that's the one thing she said to me. She said, "You are so undercover that you don't even know who you are. You haven't even been able to connect with that part of yourself yet." And that's exactly how I felt. Like I was hidden. I was trying my whole life to find out who I was. So a very significant thing happened to me in the 2020 lockdown, as it did for many of us. You know, it was a global awakening. For me, it wasn't so much the awakening, but it was the call to arms for my awakening. I had one dog at the time. Thank heavens I wasn't one of those scrambling to get a dog, during lockdown. And we were out walking in the yard and we stumbled upon a very unusual sight. And it was a conjoined squirrel. Do you know what I mean by that?
Like two, like a conjoined twins, right? Like, but
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
squirrel. Okay. Yeah.
Siamese twin squirrel,
Wow.
which is really unusual. I'd never seen anything like that in person in my entire life, and many people never will. But I found this conjoined squirrel in my yard, and half of it was still alive. The other half had either passed before they fell down into the grass or during the fall, because they had fallen a long way. The highest limb was at least 50, if not 150 feet up in the air. I'm not a very good judge of distance, but I stared at this squirrel, and my dog saw it first and she was repelled by it. Usually, she likes to hunt things like this and she will just go after it. And she saw it and she ran away. So I knew something significant was laying in the grass. And when I looked at this squirrel, my entire energy shifted. I just felt this wash of energy come over me. And you know how it is when you get these goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
Like you feel this electricity and you get these goosebumps. That's exactly what happened, only it was 100-fold. Major energy washed over me. And I knew at that instant that something huge was coming, something big was about to change. And when I asked more questions about it, because I'm like, okay, we're in the middle of lockdown. Of course, I'm going to feel something big is coming. But does this have to do with the virus? Does this have to do with, what we think we're in the middle of right now? And I was intuitively told, no, this is about you. Now, up until this point, I had no known psychic experiences, right? I was not someone who was meditating. I wasn't, trying to find my third eye. I wasn't, you know, um, I wasn't doing any of those practices that most people are doing when they're searching for their spirituality.
Yeah.
I just knew something big was coming and I needed to get ready. So I was guided and intuitively um, to build a team of people to help support me through this. So it took a while to find the right people, and I just went by my gut. That's all I knew. That's the only thing that's kept me safe my entire life, is going by my gut feeling, my gut reaction. And so I managed to find my mentor that I would be working with for the next couple of years through this entire process. And he was a psychic shaman and mystical type of person. And he was on the other side of the world. And I managed to find him, and also the astrologer that I mentioned, and a numerologist. And even actually worked with a regressive hypnotherapist as well within the process. But one by one, I managed to gather these people to my team. And so this took a couple of years to find the right people. And I just followed my gut. And by 2022, so the day that I say my awakening happened was on February 22nd, 2022. And that's the first time I met with my mentor. And I was given my instructions because he did a reading for me. And in that reading, there was a lot of personal stuff, of course, that I needed to take care of about me. But there was also a message. And it was that I was to write a book, and it was going to be done by the end of the year. And I'm like, what? Well, I'm not a writer. I'm a physical therapist. Who's going to want to read what I have to say? Most people don't want to take care of themselves. So, I was usually preaching to the choir and getting no response when I was working with my patients. So I had no idea what I was going to write about. And I spent the next probably 6 weeks trying to figure this out. And I started a number of manuscript, a number of plot lines that I thought would be attractive to people. And they just didn't feel right. They felt like work. Like if I was going to write it, it would be a lot of really hard work. That feeling, you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's going to be a lot more effort than I want to put into it.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, I start reviewing my life. And there's so many things that happened in my life that would make a good story. Because every time I would tell somebody one of these things, I'd say, you should write a book. So I started thinking about those stories, and they're all in the book. So you'll get to read. Most of them are in the book. There's a lot that I had to pull out, or else it would be a 1,000-page book. But I started to reflect on the dogs in my life. And I was like, oh my gosh, these bonds that I shared with these dogs are incredible. I bet people would love to read about that. So I kind of just started writing down everything I could remember about certain dogs in my life. And during this process, I had a dream one night. And it was one of those dreams that's not really a dream. You know what I mean by that? Like you can tell it's real, that you're in a dream state, but you are fully coherent and something very important is happening. And you're meeting with people that you don't necessarily recognize, but your soul recognizes. And you're amidst something very important that's going on. And in the middle of this dream, I was meeting with my team, my spiritual guidance team, and they kept throwing out the same 3 words. And I reached over in my dream, grabbed my journal and my pen, did never open my eyes. And I just wrote down those 3 words. I wrote them down repeatedly. The next morning, I knew something had happened, but I couldn't remember the dream. So I'm like, wait a minute, I think I wrote something down. I opened my journal, and it was the 3 words I wrote down were Canine Spirit Guide. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have the title for my book now. I know what I'm writing about, right? So I got so excited because I finally had a direction. I finally had a focus. And as I started to work with these, the stories about the dogs, that's when things started to shift for me. I started to meditate so that I could get closer, because all the dogs in the book, most of them except one, are past now. So I'm like,
Mhm.
I've got to connect with these dogs and get the real story behind what happened in my life, why they were here with me, what they were trying to share with me. And as I began to meditate and get better and better at it, I began to have these healing experiences during my meditations, really incredible energetic healing experiences. And what I didn't understand was happening was that as I was working with these dogs, I was being introduced to what they refer themselves to as canine spirit guides. These are sort of, if we're going to keep it simple, it would be a spirit guide that works with our dogs, right?
Mhm.
But instead of the spirit guide assisting the dog, just like our spirit guides assist us, right?
Right.
But these canine spirit guides aren't assisting the dog as much as they are directing the dog in how to assist us.
Mm.
So that's what they were trying to show me. And each dog, they put these dogs in groups of 4. So what they were showing me was these dogs that were in the same group had all been the same dog that reincarnated, and were all working with the same canine spirit guide. So as I wrote the book, I was led to write it in one section at a time for each canine spirit guide. So I wrote all the dogs for Anthea, sat down and wrote that section, put it aside, sat down and wrote the section for Oscar and the dogs that worked with Oscar, put that aside. So it wasn't like your typical manuscript where I had an outline and a theme and, a character development. It wasn't at all written that way. It was completely channeled because as I wrote the sections for the dogs, they were showing me and guiding me in what the messages were when they were working with me through those dogs and what they were trying to help me heal. So as I was writing it, they were literally healing me from those aspects that they had my whole life been trying to help me with, and I never saw the invitation. It was an incredible experience. And I wrote this book. It's almost 400 pages. I wrote it in 6 months,
Wow.
having no idea when I started what I was writing about. And so this healing journey took me to places deep within myself and healed me instantly from those aspects that had just been buried and buried and buried. I couldn't even see them. And what the canine guides always share with everybody is that healing is meant to be instant. It's the human belief that it takes time to heal. It takes time to get over trauma or pain or a loss of a loved one. That's a human belief. That's not at all true. And when they took me through this healing experience, each time they worked with me, that healing was instant. I didn't have to go back and revisit it. And a key point here is I didn't need to truly understand what it was. I just
Mm.
need to allow it. And it was gone. It was like layers and layers were lifted up off the top of me. And I became this completely different person. I changed how I dressed. I changed how I interacted in the world. I became more feminine. I wore dresses, makeup, jewelry. I mean, I just became this completely different person in a very natural way, not forced at all and not seeing it coming or having any idea it was going to happen. And I began to evolve into my true version of me. And so this is why they are here for humanity, is to help us heal quickly and move forward on our spiritual path, because we got stuck in this rut where we think that it's a hard process.
Yeah, well, that's as you were saying that, I think that's the term I've my whole life has said, oh, it just takes time. It just takes
Yeah.
time. Okay, we'll get past this. It just takes time. And so yeah, if that's so ingrained in us, right? That's a very, very deep linear, like that's in there, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's a
so
programming. Yeah.
yeah. And so if we can open ourselves up to a different possibility, and then,
Yeah.
and I want to back up because something you said, I just want to make sure the listeners understand this. This was being revealed to you as each section of the book was being completed, right? So it's not only like
Yes.
who you are in this and your purpose in this was being revealed to you through the process of writing the book.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
just absolutely amazing to me because it's like, I think there's maybe this logical part of our brain too that wants that like proof, right? That like spiritual proof, right? And so it was being
Yeah.
provided to you too in your own healing as you're doing this process. I think that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And you know, we as humans want to say the sky is the limit, but really the quantum's the limit. I mean, and there is no limit. if 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 you really want to get down in it and get to the core, it can happen instantly. And this is what they not only did that with me when I wrote the book, but they're constantly doing it with my clients. This we have we have access to this information, and there are only one version of what's being offered to humanity right now, because we're in such a fast moving transformation that all the beings that are here to help humanity want to make sure that we have access to any tool we need. So people who have dogs, a lot of times will do things for their dogs that they wouldn't do for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, we spend a lot of money on our dogs that we wouldn't spend on ourselves. We feed our dogs better sometimes than ourselves. We give them better medical care than we would ourselves. So this is one access point that they have chosen to assist us through. So maybe if you wouldn't be interested in healing yourself for yourself, maybe you would be interested in finding out why your dog is in your life and what healing your dog is offering you. And so that's why they have chosen to connect with us through our dogs.
It's absolutely so. Tell me, this is kind of maybe a random question or question comment, but you know, there's this ability within all of us, right, to tap into exactly what you've said, these tools,
Yeah.
these beings, this information. And maybe somebody can relate with this on a simple level, right? So I always joke about this, but it's kind of true. I don't have a dog right now in my life, but I love dogs. And the joke is, I'm walking down the street and I like say hello to the dog before I say hello to the human,
Yeah.
right? Because it's just like they like and they just bring you so much joy, and there's more to it than that, right? It can go deeper than that level of joy. And an example I'll share just from my own experience: I was on a hike, and my husband and I were on a hike, and I was having some serious knee problems. Like I was coming down the mountain and it was like just pain, right?
Uh-huh.
Um and this other couple was coming up and were going to meet us, and they had two dogs with them. And one of them was on a leash and the other one wasn't, and the one that wasn't on a leash ran to me and immediately started licking my knees.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I was like, and I just knew in that moment, I was like, you can feel my pain, can't you? Like you're here and you're trying to help me. Like in that moment I knew it. And
Mm-hmm.
like my husband was like, what are you talking about? I was like, look, like he went right to my knees. Like he
Yeah.
knows that I'm in pain. And so there's experiences like that, even, in our lives, that if we can kind of like be open to it and think about it, like there's proof and signs everywhere.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing, is being open to seeing all of that, because we have access to so much more than we realize that we do. So you really have to be open. And and the more people who think they already know the answer, the more they won't receive the answer, because the answer may not be what you think it is, and it may not be coming from where you think it is, or from where you're looking, right? And that's what's so surprising for a lot of people, is that they have this closed mindedness and think, oh, it can only come from a doctor, it can
Mm-hmm.
only come from research, right? You have more knowledge in your own DNA, in your own soul, than the human mind can ever contain. And the more you rely on that, the more access you have to the actual truth, instead of what we think we know as humans.
So true. So true. Can you give us an example when you work with a client, like what happens?
Oh, yeah. So with my sessions, I will connect with the client ahead of time energetically, And also while I'm connecting with a client, I'm connecting with the canine spirit guides. And at this point, we have a total of 12 that have come through. There's going to be 50 total that have come through. The first book contains 4, the core 4. I've already gotten the next 6. No, the next 8 for the next book, the essential 8.
Wow.
So all of these guides are waiting to be invited in to help us. And so when I work with a client, I say, okay, this is a client I'm working with. And when I sit with their energy, I'm sitting with their soul's frequency, not where they are right now, but where their soul is giving me information about, their current position in their timeline and where they need to be shifted to and what needs to be done. And so the canine spirit guide, I'll say, okay, which guide has the tools to assist this soul at this moment in their path? And so one of the guides will come forward. And if I haven't met them yet, they'll introduce themselves to me, which has been happening a lot lately because each of us is in a different place.
Mm-hmm.
The guide will come forward and give me a download of what that client needs to know about their life right now, maybe where they've been in other lifetimes or on other planets, maybe what's happening and needs to be healed or shifted, and what type of frequency we need to assist them with to get them there. So they get a reading and a healing in their session, in a single session. And when I meet with a client, I'll share the information that I've downloaded, what the canine guide has shared with me, and then we go into a healing portion of that session where it kind of looks like a guided meditation. And I describe to them what the canine guide is doing, what type of frequency and energy we're dealing with, where it's working in the body. Sometimes these guides like to work with crystals, and they can do that etherically, which is a really cool concept. And a lot of these crystals I'm not familiar with, so I have to go look them up. And then some of them use color frequency. The other day, one of the guides, Pajama, I think, used a black diamond frequency. And I'm like, does that even exist? I'd never seen a black diamond before. And they're using the type of frequency that specific person needs to shift energy. Sometimes, it can be shifting a past life trauma. It could be, a lot of us have childhood trauma in this life, that we have to get out of. We have to just get unburied from it because it's not real. We just need to be relieved of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so other times we're stuck in, and one of the examples in my book is a very complex ancestral entanglement that I was trapped in. So sometimes they'll identify that and they'll unravel it for the client and release that energy. So you're no longer bound to that agreement. But whatever needs to happen will happen in that session. It's very powerful. And when it's over, some of the clients don't even remember what happened. It was so intense. Wow. It is recorded so they can watch it again. But when it's over, you feel this massive shift. And when I open my eyes and I see my client in the screen, I can see that they've been shifted because they look completely different.
Right.
So each session is so different. I never know what's going to happen because all of us are in a different place. But it's transformative and it's incredible. And if you allow it to shift you instantly, then that will happen. But a lot of times the human brain, the ego wants to analyze, wants to question, wants proof. And this is what holds us back as humans, is this analytical part of us that doesn't want to trust. When I went through my awakening, I gave full license for the process, and I trusted everything. Now I had a mentor to work with, so I knew I was being watched over, so to speak. I knew that everything was being supervised, and I didn't feel unsafe at all. So, working with a mentor can really assist this process go a lot faster than fumbling around in the dark by yourself, and that's why I used a mentor, because I wanted to go fast and I wanted to get it done. Mm-hmm. So it's a really incredible process.
And so tell us how people can get in touch with you. If they're interested in a session, how can they get the book?
Yeah. So everything is on my webpage, heatherleighstrom.com. That's Heather, LEIGHSTROM.com. And you can sign up for a one-on-one session. You can do online programs on my webpage. You can watch my shows, which are full of channeled information from the Canine Spirit Guides. That's on my media page. And also, I have a free gift for everybody. If you go to the free resources page, I have 4 free gifts there for you. So try those out. And one of them is a meditation with one of the Canine Spirit Guides, Anthea, and it's really, really powerful. But yeah, and you're welcome to watch my show on Gnostic TV. It's really incredible. When I introduce these guides, I give you information on each one, and I do a channeled session with each one on the show. So check it out.
That's amazing. And for everyone, I'm going to link all of that in the show notes too. So easy to find. You can get there. What would you like to leave us with in terms of, people that are on this journey and are, looking for their purpose or to be healed or, maybe at the beginning phases of where you were when you started this? What's your advice?
Yeah, the biggest thing I can recommend for everybody is to open your mind and follow your heart. We like to stay in the point of safety based on fear. So if you let go of that fear and you know that you're completely taken care of, loved, supported, then you have the freedom to just allow what needs to happen to come through for you.
Absolutely beautiful. Heather Leigh, thank you so much for being here and sharing your journey. I think it's absolutely beautiful. And thank you for stepping so powerfully into that journey and being a part of healing the rest of the world.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for having me today.
All right, everyone, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Thanks for listening to The Possibility Perspective on Transformation Talk Radio. For more information about the show, you can subscribe to the podcast. Visit thepossibilityperspective.com.